Evening, Peter. Good afternoon. Afternoon, guys.
All right.
How you doing, Ben?
Well, thank you, man. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. England beat India in the first test today, so I'm feeling pretty chipper about
Okay. Awesome.
that. I do love cricket, man. How do you feel about cricket? Is it one of your sports?
Oh, no, it's huge, yeah, hey? It's huge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You guys have always got a great side. I mean, you've got one of the worst, seriously. Especially in South Africa.
Yeah. No, we love our cricket, love our rugby, so we've got lots in common. Love our soccer.
Yeah, me too, man. Any sport, I'll be watching it if it's on, or listening to it. Or often listening. Good afternoon, Peter.
Hello.
How you doing, Peter?
Good, thank you.
Hey, Neb.
Hey, how you doing, Martin?
So are we?
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
How many clients you have?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Up and down like the stock market, or?
It depends on the day, does it, Peter?
It is. Oh wait, where did it go? There we are. I have clients in sort of 3 different categories. So there are a group of clients who are established screenwriters who I worked with in the past, who for a variety of reasons I'm trying to get either to go from being film writers into television or just kind of, kickstart their film careers again. And so there are probably about 5 of those. And then about an equal number of the sort of young working writers that I'm bringing along. So like those are my 10 earning clients, right? And then at any given time, there's a group of at least 10 or more sweat equity clients who are people that have been recommended to me by either writers or agents or friends who I think are really talented and that maybe I can bring along fairly quickly, which unfortunately means in a couple of years to to actually be earning a living as a writer, and therefore I can be earning my 10%. And that Sweat Equity group is the group that sort of comes and goes, and sometimes the list is longer and sometimes the list is shorter, you know.
Right.
So yeah, that's how I work it. I don't really want to have too many clients, because then it's much harder to be the kind of hands-on day-to-day manager that I am. And then especially when things start going into production, that'll make it, you know, even more difficult. So
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for answering that. Are we still waiting for people?
well, Ben, I think Ben, you're on just vocally.
Yeah, I'm here, Peter.
Good.
Ben.
I saw Ben about a minute ago. We actually saw him for a second.
Yeah, Ben, you can be visual for the listening parts. I think it's just better if when you and I are talking to each other, if you go to the no photo, but it's up to you.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then from what I understand from Joey, Heather dropped out, but Nicole should be here. And Ori should be here. So we should wait a minute.
It says Ori's there, but there's no sign of him.
Yeah, I don't have an Ori.
There is a rectangle for him.
Yeah, but
There's nothing in it.
there's nothing in it.
Hey, Peter, just a follow-up question on that. When you're working with the Sweat Equity people, what do? You look at their script and then you give them just like an exec would. You tell them, why don't you see these changes, let's do this and that. Is that basically your process, more like a sort of a development exec?
Yeah, I mean, I really view myself in my manager role as being the producing partner of all my writing clients. So the idea is that even if I don't end up producing for a variety of reasons, I feel like what really benefits a lot of writers is having a producer's mentality throughout the whole process. So it might be working on an existing script, but it might also be indicating for what they should be writing next, you know, which can be a relatively lengthy process of going through a bunch of different pitches and testing them out and, you know, seeing which ones stick and which ones,
Right. Yeah.
you know, and then going to work on writing that next project.
Gotcha.
All right, well, it is 1:05, so I feel like with the three gentlemen in attendance, we should get started. So in terms of my note-taking, Ben, you're up at first, actually. Let's see if it works with the picture. I like seeing you. You know, as long as we don't start to have terrible lag times because of the visual. Let's try it.
Yeah.
So Social Grace, quite an extensive proposal. Is that based on sort of what the there's Ori. Hello, Ori. Was that based on what the national or provincial film board sort of asked for? Is that a format that
it's what it is the development work I've done to this point, but when we submit, we try and keep it real simple because they don't have time to read something that extensive. So they work on kind of like a deliverable system with tranche payments for each deliverable. So they ask you to do like research and bios, and then you do like an MTP, then you do a step outline, then you go first, second, third draft. It works like that. So, but when I hand those type of things in, I try and keep it to like 2 pages because they don't really, they're not going to read all of that. But
it's actually a really good example of what, you know, it's kind of an answer to Ned's question about what I do when I work with a client, because, you know, usually we begin with all of the character details that you've really gone into great depth on in that proposal, you know, because I firmly believe that television specifically is completely driven by character, over plot. So you shouldn't even be thinking about plot until you've really gotten to know your characters,
Yeah.
But even film, where I think the plot drives the characters, the better you know your characters, the richer you're going to be able to support your plot and your concept.
Sure.
So I still usually, even with a film project, ask the writers to do the kind of extensive biographies and that kind of very intellectual analysis of what's their want, what's their need, how are those in conflict, what do we like about them, what do we not like about them, what are their character flaws, how do those character flaws get in the way of their wants and needs, and so I thought all of that stuff is excellent and very well worked out. The thing I want to really talk to you about with that project is there are two things. And by the way, I love like me and like me as the tagline. I think that's clever. So the two things I want to talk about are right now as it's written. The piece is very, very strong on the character arc and her character development and the social themes. And, actually, quite honestly, most of the stuff that I end up having to work with clients on because they're too focused on the plot, right? But
Sure.
I think what's kind of missing a little bit is the sort of elements of romantic comedy plotting. In other words, almost every romantic comedy begins with some version of the cute meet or the meet cute, right? And it's become such a cliche that it's good if you don't have to do that, right? Like if she's already working with Dexter and she already has a relationship with Daniel in the township, that's fine. You don't need the meet cute. But I don't have much of a sense of, until much later when you get into the character analysis of the love triangles, and even there, I don't have much of a sense of sort of how the romance of this romantic comedy kicks off.
Sure.
Right? Sure. And then most powerfully, I don't have a sense of what your romantic statement is at the end of the script. In other words, who does she end up with and why? And even if the choice is none of the above, which is a perfectly valid choice, especially for a contemporary romantic comedy, you still have to be sort of, in a romantic comedy, building to that choice.
Sure.
Right? And that was what I felt was missing from the pitch, right?
Yeah.
Because you begin the whole thing pitching it as a romantic comedy. And,
sure.
And all of the paradigms that you choose, for the most part, are romantic comedies, Yeah. And I think Devil Wears Prada is probably the best paradigm you could choose, because it's set in the fashion industry. It's very smart. It was very successful, So to the extent that you're pitching this as a South African Devil Wears Prada, as they say in Australia, good on you. That's a good way to pitch it. But in Devil Wears Prada, they have a very because the character work and the antagonism of the Meryl Streep character are so powerful, right?
Yeah.
They take a very simple approach to the romantic through line, right?
Sure.
When she begins work at Vogue magazine, she's dating a nice guy who's a cook.
Yeah.
And while she's at Vogue magazine, she meets an actual prince.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, as she's transformed by her experience at Vogue magazine, will she marry the prince or will she marry the cook?
Sure.
And
Sure.
because American society still lies about American society, she doesn't choose the prince. She chooses the cook, right?
Yeah.
Because American society wants to believe that we don't really have class issues, and that, you know, a smart girl like Anne Hathaway is going to choose the cook, not the prince.
Yeah. Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And I think they could get away with that because there's all sorts of other wish fulfillment that she's achieved, right? She's been made over as a princess. So that wish fulfillment is already, like, the audience already likes that. So it's fine that she chooses the cook, not the prince.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. I hear you.
And so I think that in your story, and you have to look at this culturally in terms of how it would relate to your audience, right? Does she choose the prince, which is Dexter? Does she choose the cook, which is Daniel? Or two other paths, right? Is there a third guy who's kind of in the background who represents something in between someone who is, and this is my word, stuck in the township?
Sure.
Right? Versus Dexter, who is white and, you know, the prince, right? But is there a third path of a black African guy who's not a prince, but he's also not stuck in the township?
Sure.
And he's her buddy in IT, you know?
Yeah.
And he's sort of in the background. And the case you're making is that ultimately, if she loves herself and accepts herself, she'll realize that someone like that, who neither keeps her stuck in the township nor represents some fakey wish fulfillment, is the right guy for her.
Sure.
Or the fourth choice you could make is the sort of modern feminist choice, which is, I don't need a man to be fulfilled.
Sure.
And I now have developed this really good fashion business. That is my character arc for this movie. And even though it's a romantic comedy, my romantic choice at the end is to be successful and beautiful and flirty and have boyfriends. And I don't need Dexter, Daniel, or anybody else to fulfill me. I just feel like that statement of intent for the conclusion of your romantic comedy is actually the most important choice you have to make.
Sure.
And I don't know what your choice is.
Yeah, Peter, you've hit the nail on the head with this. Absolutely, I'm agreeing with you 100%. When I started off with this idea, the way I pitched it to the film commission was as a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
But the more I developed the character, the more it felt to me like the love plot, the romance plot needs to take a back seat to her personal development. I almost feel like the character's not in the place where she's ready to now go on a relationship. So where we're going with this at the end is she chooses neither of them.
Yes.
Like I've said at the end of the movie, I've actually plotted it very loosely as the first of a trilogy of movies. So it feels to me that when Grace comes back in the second one, she's ready to explore love properly. So I think calling it, giving it the genre of rom-com is actually incorrect. It tends to be more of a comedy with a love element than a rom-com. Am I right there? Or
I think you should then definitely recharacterize it as a kind of female self-discovery comedy.
Yeah.
Not a romantic. Yeah.
Sure.
More like, this is actually one of the things I think that people like so much about Lady Bird last year was that it was a female self-discovery dramedy. It really was not. I mean, even though she ends up fucking the guy at the end of the movie at Columbia, it even that is just like a tossed off thing, and then it moves on to her relationship with her mother, and that's what it ends. You know? And so it was not about Lady Bird coming of age and finding the right guy. You know, Gerwig was not interested in that. And I mean, I think it's actually a somewhat mediocre movie and got way too much praise. But I think because of that choice, it felt more powerful. You know, it wasn't about, oh, is the poet the right guy for her, or the rebel the right guy for her, or you know.
No, agreed completely. It's almost, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but I feel like the love story for this movie is self-love is really the theme. So if she can't love herself, I mean, she's not ready for loving anybody else or even being loved. Because she doesn't understand.
I think once you've made that strong choice, my other note is, I'm not sure that something that is as psychologically valid and realistic as what you're pitching can bear the weight of a pretty, to me, unbelievable device that she could, just through a makeover, return to the company, and Dexter and, what is it, Victoria, the girlfriend? Would sort of just not recognize her, and her workmates in IT and the other people, the security, you know, like no one. It's sort of, you know, you can get away with it in the Superman movies when Clark Kent just puts on his glasses. It's like nobody recognizes that he's Superman. You know? But that's a comic book device that's gone back to 1938. You know, and everybody just accepts it. But I sort of feel like in a more realistic, more socially conscious, what's now a female empowerment movie, right? I think that device just feels really fake. And I don't think you need it. In other words, I think what would be more interesting is that she has developed this other persona online. Right? And where she experiments with the fashion tips and the things that Veronica has sort of been stealing from her. Right? And at a certain point in the narrative, maybe she doesn't even find the ability to voice it, but maybe it's even the security guard or somebody else, you know, steps up for her and somehow engineers it so that Dexter finds her website, realizes that a lot of these good ideas have been coming from her, not Victoria, right? And sort of says to her, if you were that person, you know, I would move you from the IT department to the fashion department. Right? And so, but like, it's kind of what Meryl Streep says to Anne Hathaway. If you're going to work at this magazine, you can't wear those ugly clothes, you know? And then she just takes her apart for her cerulean sweater, you know, with one of the best monologues ever. You think you chose that cerulean sweater. You did it. I chose that cerulean sweater for you, you know. If you want to work here, step up your game, you know. And so I think that can be Dexter's role, right? And then your protagonist has to now dress better and put on some makeup and move into the fashion office. And then she's fully in conflict with Victoria because is Dexter flirting with her? Is Dexter bringing her, you know, into the, I mean, now it's a double-barreled conflict with Victoria. Why is my boyfriend promoting the woman whose ideas I've been stealing, you know? Now I've got to kind of compete on my own, you know? And then your protagonist has to step up her game. And so does Victoria, right? And I think you create less of a straw woman in Victoria if she does step up her game, right? Like,
Yes.
it's like, okay,
Yes.
I can't steal from this woman anymore. You know, I am going to step up my game. I'm going to come up with a spring line that proves I can do it on my own, you know? And then it becomes this sort of heated contest. And we really wonder if this girl from the township can possibly compete with someone who has all the resources that Victoria has, you know?
Sure.
And that can go in many different directions. It can be, you know, Rocky, where she doesn't win, but she proves she can compete.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, because I didn't buy that device. Like, you know, if she just put on a Chanel suit and a pair of stiletto heels as opposed to African fabrics and sandals, everybody there would still know it's her.
Sure.
You know, I mean, they wouldn't in a broad romantic comedy. You could get away with it in a broad romantic comedy.
Yeah.
But in a more socially conscious, real, you know, dramedy, I don't think you can get away with that device.
Okay, I'm hearing you, and you're challenging me, and you're challenging my thinking, which I like. So, just so I can understand, I like the idea. I understand you perfectly. So, you're saying that the weight of the material, the thematic stuff that we're dealing with, we are actually, I am what's the word I want to use now? I'm actually weakening the story by dumbing it down with that kind of thing. So I still want to keep the idea of her pretense, because I think that's key. So I just want to pitch something to you.
Yeah.
So
because that goes back to the very first thing about integrity, right? Like, don't throw it out with the bathwater. If the integrity for you is pretense, then maybe you find a different solution.
Sure. So let me just pitch this to you. So let's just take your example. So let's say Dexter finds out about her and says, okay, you're so talented, you got all this stuff, but you never showed it to me when you were here. If you want to come back, you got to step up. So she becomes this different person, not in terms of a makeover, but she does herself up because she wants to fit in, which means she's still perpetuating the lie, because when she's there, she knows that's not her. She's only doing it because she wants to be in there and she wants to please him, and maybe she still wants to get with him. So it's the same story, really, just without the device. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, yeah. And that is for her putting on a mask that she's not comfortable with.
Exactly. Without having to do it in a cheesy kind of way, she stays a real person, but she's still doing what she said she wouldn't do, which is buying to everybody's demands so that she can fit in. She's just doing it in a different way.
Yeah,
she's still going on the same journey.
The only negative reaction I had was to the idea that she would show up in the Chanel suit and the stiletto heels, and
nobody would recognize her.
Say, nice to meet you, Sally. You know, and I'd be like, no, come on, you know, I'm terrible with names. What's your name? Grace? Is it? Yeah, Grace. They would know it's Grace.
Yeah.
You know, but this I think is different. This is sort of like, and this could be with you know, then you could have how different people react to this new mask, you know? And you know, what does Daniel think about it? What does her mom and her sisters think about it? What does the security guard, the magical character, think about it? You know, what are the different types of advice or comments she's getting, you know, and how do those make, and how does it become both a stepping stone to one kind of success, but an obstacle to what, as you point, you know, what you really want to get to is that she needs to love the true version of herself.
Correct.
So this makeover is a path to what she wants, which is to be a fashion designer and successful, but it's an obstacle to what she needs, which is to be comfortable with herself.
Yes, correct. I actually like that, Peter. It's a challenge, but what you're saying makes complete sense, and it feels a lot more substantial to me.
Yes.
So that it's more dramedy. Are we now more in the territory of dramedy?
Yeah. In other words, if you really wanted this to, take for instance the difference between Devil Wears Prada, which is an extremely smart, socially conscious, but still like fairy tale ending kind of rom-com, right? But then compare that to Legally Blonde, which is just joke, and so there, they can just play any kind of broad comedy trope,
Sure.
I mean, there is actually no way she could have gotten into Harvard Law School. There is no way succeeded the way she did. Everything about that movie is fake. But none of it matters because it's supposed to be. It's a
that's it. We in that territory, so we just suspend belief for that.
Yeah,
because of the way that
I mean, she hasn't even applied to law school, right? And and then she sort of marches in.
Yeah, she's there.
She gets into Harvard Law School. It's like, and it's okay because it's Reese Witherspoon and it's all odd comedy.
Yeah. I hear you 100%. We're on the same page, and I think I just have to make the difficult decision and commit to it and go with it. But I think it can work. The more I think about it, I'm telling exactly the same story. But just in a very real way.
By the way, go for comedy and make it as entertaining as possible, and make it a true female wish fulfillment movie. And I would, I mean, with my producer hat on, I would say give her a prince at the end of the movie. It's just not Dexter.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Martin.
Hey, Peter. Hey, Ben. It sounds a bit like Working Girl as well.
It does. Yeah.
Years ago.
Definitely a reference.
Well, and Working Girl as a movie from the 80s at least took class somewhat seriously, right?
Sure.
That Melanie Griffith really was a lower middle class girl from Queens, who brings something special and is able to beat Sigourney Weaver and get the man. I feel like that movie in the 21st century is a little too simple-minded. I'm not sure it would play as well now the way it did then. But the wish fulfillment of the plain girl getting the fella works over and over and over. I mean, another classic example of it is Flashdance. Jennifer Grey, pre-nose job, gets Patrick Swayze, even though the sexy dancer girl is much more attractive and of his world and everything else. But he chooses the homely little Jewish girl, and the movie goes on to be a huge hit. I mean, there is enormous wish fulfillment and all of that. I think that with Devil Wears Prada, the reason that people love that movie so much is that she becomes a princess simply by learning from Meryl Streep, not by marrying the prince.
Exactly.
They dangle the prince at her, but that is truly not what she needs to become a princess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it also made me think a bit about She's Gotta Have It as well.
Well, yeah. It's still, I think, Spike's best movie.
But it sounds very similar to that, the kind of where it is now. It sounds a bit like that.
Yeah.
Have you seen that, Ben? You seen She's Gotta Have It?
I have a while ago, hey? But I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, in that, Nona Darling finds herself, I mean, Spike goes off on, interpretive dance weirdness and other things that a young filmmaker does, but it is a movie about how Nona Darling just sort of finds herself, and it's not about her man, you know. It's about her.
It's definitely about female empowerment, isn't it?
Yeah.
When was that? When did that come out? It was late 80s, maybe?
Late 80s. It was his first feature after he graduated from NYU. It's got to be, I think it was even before I moved to LA, so it's like 84 or 85. I mean, it's really, yeah, but I mean, I love that movie. Well, I mean, Do the Right Thing is still his best movie, but
definitely. Because the sweet little indie movie.
It's a more mature film, but She's Got to Have It is a great film.
Yeah. Yes. So, Peter, just another thing, this comment that you made about her perhaps getting the prince at the end. Just two things I want to ask you about that. The one is I'm trying to stay away from this idea that she's whole because she has a man. So I want to stay away from that.
Yep.
But the other thing is, if she gets the prince, my story sense says it must be something unexpected.
Yes.
That would work.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not pushing it hard. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that. And again, I think you have to look at this with cultural sensitivity for your audience.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But I feel like a woman stepping up from the township, right, and really sort of making it in this now, you know, much more upper class environment and this metropolitan environment, right?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I don't know where these movies are in South Africa and how many there have been, right? But I feel like it's a little depressing to sort of say, if she makes that choice and Dexter's not right for her because he is a white guy and he's just not the guy she should end up with. But Daniel's not the right choice for her either, because he's stuck in the township and ultimately she's not.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know that in African American movies, this becomes a real issue because of the when there was this whole theoretical statistical epidemic of unmarried women in their 30s, you know, that there were a lot of articles written about in America about a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
Among segments of the 30-something population, the problem was the largest in the African American population.
Sure.
So many of these 30-something women, especially the ones who had attained upper class status, were single. You know, and so, like, you know, there is a sense of like, movies should have a wish fulfillment factor to them, right? And and not just reflect back the social reality of like, well, life is tough. and
we know it.
And you make some tough choices. And it's like, okay, Grace, you now have a fashion career, but you don't have
screw everybody else.
I hear you. Short of making her a lesbian, it's kind of like, are you sort of dooming her to this life of single womanhood, which a lot of my African American female friends who are in their 30s or 40s are just sort of accepting now, right? Because a lot of the upper middle class men that they meet are white, you know, and although they want to be in friendships or maybe even romances with those guys, they don't ultimately want to marry them.
Sure.
You know? And the upper middle class black men have such a wide range of choices. Yeah. You know, that because a lot of them do marry a white woman or a different kind of woman of color and don't necessarily marry an African American woman.
Sure.
That, you know, so anyway, I'm just saying this, you have to figure this out, but I feel like you could also give her own version of a prince. Then you have a socially conscious, really wonderful film that also has a wish fulfillment.
Listen, I'm going to agree with you. I think you're right in this. I think your instinct about it is right. What I'm trying to wrap my mind around is how best to do it. It's also, and it's not incompatible with the movie, because at the end of the day, she initially is not interested in Daniel because he doesn't make the social grade that she's trying to get into.
Yes.
But I don't want to put it. I wouldn't want to convey it, even though the document kind of puts it starkly. In the script itself, so I don't want it conveyed like that. I want it to kind of be like she doesn't see him. He's there, he sees her, he sees her value.
Right, but
so
she can't see the value.
She doesn't see him. She doesn't see him. So maybe the compromise is by the end of the movie, after she's had her change, that she sees him. They don't have to end up together, but there's just that kind of that moment where we get the sense that she finally sees him.
And if you give it the hope if you give it that kind of hopeful ending, like you're not giving it the fake payoff that they're going to actually, the last scene is going to be their marriage.
Correct.
But you give it that hopeful ending of, I like that she really sees him, and suddenly like, oh wait, he's not just a taxi driver.
Correct.
Yeah. Like she finally goes to his apartment and she discovers that he loves jazz and she loves jazz, and there's more to him than she was ever willing to give him credit for,
100%.
Yeah.
And the thing that works.
Would still be wish fulfillment. You know what I mean?
Sure. But not in a cheesy way, because the other thought that I had about it is, he sees her and she sees him for the first time, but it's sometimes I feel like when a character has been through an arc and through a change, how do we know that? How do we see that?
Visual and active.
Exactly. So this would give me an opportunity to do that as well. If she, in the scene, if she sees him.
If she's never been to his apartment, because quite honestly, like that's, especially in the township, everybody would know. And
sure.
A woman doesn't go to a man's apartment because she'll be perceived as loose. But now she's a different person, so she's comfortable going there as his 100%. Friend, as his friend, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, wait, this guy's not.
Yeah. There's more to him.
There's more to him than I thought.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I think that's great. Because then, that's also the lesson that she had to learn about herself.
Correct.
Because I wear township clothing doesn't mean I'm not beautiful, bright, ambitious, all these things.
Sure.
And just because he wears township clothing and drives a van or whatever that classic sort of township job is, there's more to him too.
Yeah. No, I like that. Peter, thank you so much. I think you've really added a lot of value to the idea, and I love everything that we've spoken about. I really, it's just you've really lifted the story with your suggestions. So thank you.
My pleasure. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's good because we have extra time for everybody since there are only 4 of you today. Let's go on. Martin, since your face is there, there's not a lot to talk about. Tell me what you think you accomplished in this rewrite, and then I'll give you a little feedback.
I was just trying to, I really took on board what you were saying, and I went back and I looked at it and I thought, oh God, this is just not working. I'm trying to get it up on the feet. But, Ori, are you there, Ori? Sorry, Peter, I just got Ori's rectangle for a minute right in front of me, but it's not him. I thought it's just it become a bit of a mess because it started off as basically a teen drama about addiction, and it was a bit like Riverdale or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, it's kind of, and now it's just morphed into something that's, between like something Fargo-ish heading down that path, but still got teens at the center of it. So it's kind of I think it's lost its way into in what it actually is. Is it a teen drama? Is it an adult themed drama, but sort of with a murder at the center of it? This kind of thriller and this, but that was the kind of idea. It just, as a teen drama, it just seemed a little bit trite. And so I'm like, and now it seems to be going in a direction which has some, at the heart of it, is kind of looking at, what it's like to be a Native American in contemporary America, which is, but I'm a bloody Londoner. And,
but let's face it. It was a bloody Londoner who finally made the best movie and one of the only movies about slavery in America, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes it does take an outsider. I mean, he's African English, but Steve McQueen's is still a complete outsider to American slavery, and he came in and really, won the Academy Award. I mean, he just. He did it. So I actually think you're absolutely on the right path. And I totally agree with you. If the murder of Chief, which in and of itself, if it's just about like Chief and this white cop, I already feel like, oh, you're calling the guy Chief. It's all like, you're just off on the wrong foot. But if it's the murder of Chief, and then you immediately cut to Chief's daughter and her two daughters and their life, and then you give her agency because she doesn't know that her father's dead, and now she's looking for him, even though the audience knows he's dead and now in the hands of the police investigation. You're already off on an adult, Fargo feeling TV show, right?
Well, I really took on board what you said about the other as well, Peter, because that shit's really important to me anyway. Right?
Yeah,
and I'm like, I'm just not telling. This story needs something bigger and something meaningful, and what your note was just so spot on. Is about these Native Americans and
and also if the other deep theme is the theme of addiction,
yes,
this is second to smallpox and all the other things that we brought to the indigenous population to wipe them out. The continuing problem is addiction. They did not have alcohol. They did, they, for whatever reason, they didn't ferment their corn into, beers or alcohols. And so, the continuing, if there's a population in America that has the most difficult time with addiction, it is the Native American population, because their blood chemistry, it becomes addicted much more quickly and much more terribly than whites or blacks. I guess from what I've read, Asians also sometimes have a similar blood chemistry issue with alcoholism. But anyway, I mean, my point being that it fits your theme, right? And so like, here's this culture that has such a huge problem with addiction, and then here are all these white people who should be much better off, and some of them they're rich, right? But they're all still addicts. And so, then you have a really kind of nice, subtle irony working for you in this Fargo-esque crime drama, And then the kids are the supporting cast. It's about the parents, but the Indian mom has kids, and the lower middle class white family has kids, and the rich guy has a kid, but that serves their stories as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, I guess originally it kind of started as like a bit of a soap opera, but it's turned in. It's not. I don't think so. It has that kind of structure.
And remember, soap opera isn't necessarily pejorative.
No. I mean, especially in the UK, where that's what we survive.
No, in other words, like really good TV shows often are soap operas. It's just, the characters are deeper, the dialogue's better, you know, and you don't have, you know, everybody doesn't have an insane twin who's a serial killer, you know.
I mean, you could say ER was a kind of a soap opera, wasn't it? I know it's a series, but
yeah, no, I mean, look, Fargo's a soap opera, you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But you know, it's a soap opera with incredible specificity about what a, you know, crime family in the upper Midwest would behave like. But like, you know, especially the second season, which is the one I know the best, it's absolutely a soap opera about this crime family falling apart, and the daughter, you know, who's meeting the black guy, and the sons who are fighting for control of the crime family, you know. So I think you're really on the right track, Martin. I think.
Thank you, man. I mean, that's great. I really went away, and I don't know what's going on with Ori.
I think Ori's moving furniture.
Whatever you're doing, turn your mic off, Ori. Yeah,
can you guys hear me?
Yes. There was just a point there where it sounded like you were moving furniture.
Oh, that's really weird. Sorry, I'll mute. I apologize.
No worries.
Don't worry, man. Don't worry.
But you know, so Martin, I think like stay on this track. You know, you cut a lot of the dialogue. The dialogue that's there is now much more pointed. You know, I think you're on a really good track with that, and keep trying to keep that rhythm, that pace, the shorter scenes, the you know, the punctuated scenes, you know, I think you're off to a really good start. Let me just give you a couple of really tiny notes just about, you know, I'm always terrible with character names. What's your
don't worry about it, man.
The lower middle class dad, you know, who's the granddad.
Bert. Is it Bert?
Bert, yeah. So the reason I still think he's British is he calls everybody lads.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's right.
That's a Britishism. Yeah. Whether he's referring to his grandson or the Texans, he wouldn't say lads.
What would you say if you're in America? What would you normally say to your grandson if you're in America?
A man of his age, he like if he was talking to his grandson, I mean, really, just he would probably use his name,
right?
Or sometimes, I mean, I know that like when I'm trying to either have fun with my kids or reach them, I call them my kid, you know, my daughter, right, as opposed to her name, or I'll call her my lovely daughter, you know, but like,
I hear you, man.
You know, but lad is a British word. I mean, you could go through all of America and never hear a person say lad.
Man, there's always a little thing like that, you know, it's just idiom. I'm just
and the other one is whilst.
All right.
Bert says whilst. Okay. I don't think I'm an old man, and I don't think I've ever heard an American say whilst.
Okay, no problem. Thanks. I know. Thank you, man.
So those are a couple of things. Oh, yeah. And then Jackson says mum.
Oh, yeah.
That's also a Britishism. He would say mom, M-O-M.
Thanks, man. It's just tiny little things like that. I just
but you know, it's impossible because you're not in Aspen right now writing this thing. Listen to American voices, you know. But I think you're on a really good track, Martin. So I don't think there's much else for me to talk about at this point. Just keep.
So homework this week, carry on.
Carry on, and really try to keep that level of tension and scene structure. Get in and out of those scenes quickly. You know, you can always go back in and add more. Yeah. But to the extent that you're comfortable getting in and out of those scenes quickly like that, you know, and only having sort of the cop character be a little more of a monologue or a little more of a chatterbox, right? That's okay. That's his character.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Well, it just, I really appreciated your notes last week. It's just come alive because of it. Thanks, man.
I felt so too. As a matter of fact, I went back and reread the original draft just to see what was happening and to make sure I was right, you know, and the old draft goes right to Bert's house and then, you know, deals with a lot of the family drama stuff. And this show just feels completely different by cutting from the cold open to the daughter, you know, the chief's daughter's house. It just changes the whole show, you know.
Well, I went away, you know, you said do the character biogs. I did all that and really thought about it. So thanks, man.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Ori, in terms of your question in the email about original skin, absolutely yes to the multiple locations, unless you want to turn it into a feature. You know, the reason that Alex Garland's film works so well is because you get this very high concept science fiction film in a single location that really reduces the cost of it, so that the only element that's science fiction is the robot covering on her head, you know, and then the rest of it is a taut thriller of these two men and this robot woman in a beautiful house, you know. And I think when you're writing a feature, especially a first feature, and even more especially if it's one you want to direct, to the extent that you can keep all of the locations to a limit, all of the characters to a limit, all of the need for special effects to a limit. I mean, he got a real budget for that movie, but honestly, that's a movie that you could have DIY'd. You know, if you had a friend who was good enough to put the green screen cap on her head and provide those robot effects, the rest of that movie you could have made for no money in some, you know, friend's nice house.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a particular design thing that you do when you're trying to write a movie for yourself to direct.
Yeah.
You know, but I think Original Skin, as what you're now conceiving as this kind of workplace corporate sort of drama, you know, about introducing this new technology into the culture and how it's going to affect the culture, you are absolutely going to want to also see where these employees live, you know, where they hang out. You in a TV show, you want to expand that world into those places, you know, and not feel trapped in the corporation unless there was a really good creative choice why you're doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's Original Skin. On Objectify, that script's in really good shape.
Super.
It's, you know, again, it's, I now see where you could take Original Skin, right? Because Objectify, you just have this, you know, you have a future world, but it's very much along the lines of something that most people who watch and read science fiction, which includes most people in television, right, know about gamification and, you know, sort of the gamification of life and how everybody's using it to drive sales, to drive, you know, everything. And so the whole idea that, and also there have been so many articles about, you know, the loss of jobs and the loss of work and what are people going to do in the future. So, you know, you're going to play games to earn $32 to pay for a taxi cab. Like, your world building in that is very, very clear. Right. And then the fact that people are revolting against that makes sense, right? And you have nice little dialogue things like where she says that her sister inherited her mother's job.
Yeah.
You know, that's a nice little twist on in any contemporary conversation about inheritance. It's about inheriting the house.
Yeah.
You know, everybody cares about real estate or maybe the money, you know.
Yeah.
But the idea that the most valuable thing in your 30 years into the future culture is the job itself, and now that's inheritable, you know, that's a nice little piece of exposition that's slipped into a character scene about two sisters.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like the script's in very good shape. I feel like you need to explain what MIG means before page 22 because it's sort of an important concept to the show, and it's actually come up several times before that, and you don't want the audience to already be kind of losing the thread because they don't know what MIG is. I mean, that's a tiny thing, but it would make a difference.
Cool. Yeah.
The cold open is so fucking weird, you know, and you kind of go, what? Like, what the fuck with that weird suit that she's putting on, and why? And it's her own kid, and you know, and then you cut to 4 months earlier and explain it. You know, that's classic pilot structure. Really good use of a cold open. I wasn't sure you could pull it off because I thought the cold open was so fucking weird. I was like, oh, here's Ori going off the rails again, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I get it. And then this concept that AI is bullshit and that all these robots are actually prison labor. That's a really cool concept. I guess as well structured as it is, and as much as I enjoyed reading it, here's the Molotov cocktail I sort of want to throw at you, which is, I don't think this is a TV show. I think it's a movie. And I think that because if you are going to keep her, as they say in the pilot, you're never going to leave this place, right?
Yeah.
And she meets that wonderful little, who's that great little person actress, Linda Hunt. You know, you meet that wonderful kind of Linda Hunt character, you know, who sits there and it depends.
Yeah.
And, you know, the best prison labor AI ever. You know, she's a great character, but it's kind of like, if this is your protagonist's future, how many fucking episodes am I going to bear with that? And if the idea is that she's so good at what she does and she's the best technological manipulator in the world for whatever reason, and you've laid in nicely that there's something going on with her brain, you know, that's different. Right. So, okay, maybe the season 1 cliffhanger is she escapes, right? But then you're now you're just back in a somewhat standard future world like Ready Player One, where there is no work and there is no, you know, and gamification is taken over and everybody's spending all their time in virtual reality. So I kind of feel like what is unique and fresh about this is that there is a huge problem in the United States, and especially in Louisiana, in Louisiana, it's not even corporatized prisons. It's the state prison system, when slavery ended, became the new form of slavery, you know? And those prisoners in Angola for years have been building all the roads and building all the levees, and you know, it's slave labor, and it's predominantly black slave labor, and you know, it's been allowed for forever. And now other states are following the same system by corporatizing their prisons and then putting the private prison labor to work. And they only have to pay these guys 15 cents an hour and they're manufacturing stuff. You know, it's a terrible problem. And by putting it 30 years into the future and putting it into this sci-fi concept of, oh, they're robots, but there really aren't.
Yeah.
Right? That to me really sustains a cool 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that what you do is you, instead of putting her in prison up in the cold open, in your movie, she would be this incredibly successful person, right? Who gets into some trouble, falls in with the two assholes to make extra money. She thinks she has a robot for her daughter.
Yeah.
She thinks it's an AI.
Yeah.
You know, now she goes to prison and the second act is, oh man, fuck. AIs are actually prison labor.
Yeah.
And how the fuck is she going to escape from a maximum security panopticon?
Yeah.
And rescue her daughter and her boyfriend and get the hell out of Dodge. Which she does. And she takes down Huss and the real robot fighter that he's created.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and lives happily ever after.
Yeah.
But like, to me, that's a really cool 2 hour movie, which has very understandable sci-fi concepts with very deep themes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, basically, yeah. So it seems to me that like with some modification, I've got sort of like the first 2 acts in that, or I've got like an act and a half.
Yeah. You have to change the structure and you have an act and a half. Exactly. And then you've got to figure out how big a bad is Huss.
Yeah.
And do you want sort of, you know, usually in these kinds of things, you want to pull the rug out from people. So we think Huss is the big bad, but someone else is even the bigger big bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
That she sort of needs to take down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I mean, I just reread the script. A really good paradigm for you would be Children of Men. Where I still don't know why that film isn't a hit. I mean, to me, it's such an edge of your seat, tense action film.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the scene with the car rolling. Yeah.
Oh my God! And the final sequence in the city that's at war, and he's got to get through there with the woman and the baby, and you know, I mean, it's just a really the rolling car sequence. I mean, that is fucking great action sequence. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it takes a pretty straightforward 30 years into the future idea. Fertility's dead. A woman who's fertile is the most valuable thing in the world. And then it takes, you know, a very straightforward, quite honestly, to me, ripped completely from Casablanca. You know, Clive Owen's character is Rick. He's good at what he does. He's totally jaded. He fought the war 30 years ago. He ain't fighting it anymore. You know, and here's the one reason to come back and do the right thing.
Yeah.
And he does it. And really it's not about him, whether he makes it or not. That doesn't matter. He puts her and the baby on the right path.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you flip that with your female protagonist, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying follow the paradigm beat for beat, but you could almost do that, right? Like she's someone who got trained up to be incredibly adept at manipulating gamification systems.
Yeah.
And won the war. And now she's got a good life with her daughter and a cute boyfriend. And then the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's a good character setup. I think the world building integrates with the character and the theme, and we don't know that it's about prison labor until we get into Act 2.
Yeah.
And then a bomb really drops, and it's like, fuck, this is actually a commentary on prison labor.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, and then you have a sort of all is lost second act where she's tried to break out and she fails, you know. And everything's going wrong, and she's lost touch with her kid because she's been rotated out of the robot that sees her kid, and like all is lost. But then, you know, however you manufacture it, she gets out of the fucking prison in the beginning of the third act.
Yeah.
Finds her daughter, figures out who the big bad is. You know, I don't think it's a world saver. Like, I don't think she, you know, it's not like one of those movies where, oh, you know, she finds Dr. What's her name, you know, and
Laserstein.
Who is the face of all of the AIs, and, you know, kills her and blows up her laboratory. Like, I don't think you need to go to that level of stakes. I think it's more like Children of Men, where she pulls off a rescue.
Yeah.
But this society is going to go on with or without her.
Yeah.
But I really liked it, and I just argue with me if you really feel like it could sustain 5 years. But like, I don't even see necessarily how this sustains the season.
Well, I mean, it's the season is going to season one is going to be season one is going to be about like her attempting to escape and using the stolen money in order to try to bribe her way out.
Because she still has that. Yeah,
because she still has that.
The idiot brother's money.
Yeah, so there's going to be kind of this. I've kind of plotted out that there's a sort of like this almost Fargo type situation where you've got the lawyer, Jim Grage, and you've got the brothers, and everyone's basically trying to get this money. And she's basically trying to put together a scheme to bribe her way out. And at the same time, she realizes that if she kind of puts her mind into a certain place, she can get the robot to do things that the robot should not be able to do. Without sort of like activating the bladder inside of her neck. And so she kind of puts herself like into this trance, and she's able to kind of like use the robot to send emails and to communicate and to do things. And there's going to be like season one is going to be all about this extended caper where it looks as though she's going to get out. It looks as though she's going to escape, and then something goes wrong. And then the last scene of season one is, you know, that that she hasn't. You know that the very last scene of season one is she's almost escaped. Everything has gone wrong in the season finale, and the last scene is that Rosie, whom you know is no longer operated by Kat anymore, basically picks up Yaz and says, you know, hey Yaz, it's me, it's your mom.
Yeah.
And then sort of like season two is going to be about like, who's operating Rosie now, and who is this robot? Meanwhile, like Yaz is totally rotated out and in prison, dealing with a lot of prison violence and trying to get back to Rosie. And in the process of that, setting off, like, what she wants to, and you know what you say, like, it's not going to like change the world, right? But like season two is going to be about Kat trying to find Yaz, but in trying to find Yaz, she actually sets off like a French Revolution. Like she actually sets off society, an uprising that basically changes the society, where like the prisoners, all of a sudden, because they're the robots, she teaches them sort of like how to operate the robots without their heads exploding. Then all of a sudden, like the robots become a political force.
Right.
And the prisoners then some prisoners will actually want to leave the prison, and other prisoners are actually so comfortable inside the headspace of being the robot that they don't actually want to leave the prison. And then season three is about Yaz has been put into this kind of state foster care system, like Huss has been killed and blah, blah, blah. So season 3 is like Yaz is inside this state foster care system being cared for by this robot that still claims to be her mom. And Kat now is on the outside trying to find, her child. And
so Rosie has become a sentient AI.
Well, basically what happens is that, there's been so much, they actually create a sort of network webbed sentient AI from like all of these different microchips observing like 1 billion human interactions in the form of these robots.
Yeah. So AI had failed up until this point, but in a way, Cat makes it happen.
Exactly.
It creates the singularity.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically where I see this going in about, between, 3 and 4 seasons.
It definitely could work because, certainly with these shows, once you get beyond season 1, season 2, they can go in a lot of different directions, right? And people are getting more and more used to things like Fargo, where it's not even the same characters anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the same world. It's Midwestern crime, and it's all going to take place in either Missouri or North Dakota, but it's different characters, like, so eventually you could even lead away from Cat, and it becomes more Eli's story, and he's on the run and he's experiencing a different thing in this 30 years in the future gamified world.
I think that actually if we make it to like season 5, it'll ultimately be Yaz's story. It'll ultimately be Yaz's story and her
jump enough into the future that she's a young woman and
exactly.
I mean, that could work. And I don't, like I said, I think you've got a really well-written pilot here, and, you may not want to, take a cleaver to it and hack it apart and try to put it back together as a feature, And with my kind of producer hat on, it's hard to weigh, as we talked about from the very first conversation about Original Skin, it's like once you start getting into more expensive science fiction realms, whether it's TV or features, they tend to want IP. And so with my producer hat on, I guess I'd have to ask myself, like, and then also with my manager hat, in terms of you, Ori, breaking out because you've written a really cool world with a very fresh concept, which would better break you out? Having this as an original pilot or having this as a feature script? And I don't have a clear answer on that. I got to think about that. The world building that you do in it as a pilot, if it became attractive to an agent and to that community, it's still more limited in terms of like what kinds of shows he could staff you on, or she, the agent, could staff you on, because the Sci-Fi Channel is, unfortunately a lot of mostly crappy programming, and this is actually way too smart for the Sci-Fi Channel, right? So it sort of becomes like Mr. Could you get a staff job on Mr. Robot or something else that's like really smart world building with more developed characters, not the sort of stupid sci-fi of most of the Sci-Fi Channel shows, other than maybe like Battlestar Galactica or Eureka, which I think was that the name of the show? Anyway, that was a decent show for a while. But whereas as a feature, without the IP, it'll be tougher to sell. But if somebody options it or picks it up, because it is such a cool sci-fi world, and those are hard to find, with a great starring role for a female lead, which is more in demand right now, that could break you out. and then you could get hired because people are constantly optioning science fiction novels and comic books and short stories, you know, to try to turn them into movies. And then you could be a go-to person for that because you nailed it with Objectify.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. I think that.
Have you gotten this pilot out into the community at all, either in Canada or here?
No, I mean, I didn't want to really do anything. I didn't want to ship it out until it was like perfect. I actually, you know, I was excited for, Chris Rosati from Monkey's Paw to take a look at it. So like he took a look at it through the roadmap program.
Yeah.
And he really, really liked it and actually had some like really good notes that I incorporated and I shipped it back out.
He's a really smart guy, and that's a great company. Jesus.
Yeah. But no, it's like I haven't really put it out yet, and so I'm just kind of like figuring out. I'm kind of like figuring out like, you know, what to do with it, and maybe sort of like it is a matter of like chopping it up and extending it and turning it into, you know, like a feature. Like in my mind,
I guess just from my own personal experience, one of my clients who mostly, I think I mentioned this to you the first time we were talking about Original Skin, he mostly writes social justice dramas, right? And then he ended up being pitched a really silly idea, which he turned into a really good idea, you know, and wrote a genre pilot that got him an agent and started to get him some traction. And then he followed that up, because that did so well, with another genre pilot that is set in a VR world.
Yeah.
And I thought it was terrific. And the agents wouldn't even go out with it. You know, they just said, this VR thing's been done to death. It's really hard to sell into the marketplace right now. The networks don't want to do it anymore. You know, we'll see if Reverie even works and gets another season. You know, it's like, so that's why I'm worried about it for you a little bit as a pilot. You know, I just worry that the agent community and then the sort of smart executive community, even like Chris, will be like, it's a really cool pilot, but I don't know what to do with it. You know, whereas I think as a film, in an odd way, there are fewer people taking these kinds of shots anymore on high concept, you know, sci-fi types of things, because the world has become so IP driven. So maybe having a really fresh, original concept sci-fi thriller like this, you know, might actually, like, there might be a film agent out there who says, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this. I'm going to send it to the major studios and all the A24s of the world, you know, and see if somebody wants to step up and sees this as a kind of ex machina. You know, it doesn't have to be a $200 million movie. It could be whatever Ex Machina cost, you know, or plus a little more, because it's not just stuck in that one location.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not a $100 million movie, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, I don't know how good it would be. I guess I wouldn't know until I typed it up. I mean, there, you know, like what I see for like sort of like the first season is a lot of her trying to negotiate the world outside as a robot and the violence of the world inside as a prisoner. And so what I could theoretically do is like take all of those ideas, just sort of like take the best beats I can possibly think of, and just have it be sort of like, this is kind of like an escape. This is basically an escape thriller, where sort of like she gets out. Yeah, and I agree that like Huss is not the big bad, and like, you know, the big bad is like Dr. Laserstein, and like, you know, and basically how she is a better gamer of the system than Laserstein is a designer of prisons.
Right.
And so basically what it comes down to is like, she is a better gamer than she's a better game breaker than Laserstein is a game designer.
So she can break the panopticon, you know?
Yeah.
But like, I kind of feel like, I guess in my gut, I still feel like that's a great 2-hour story.
Yeah.
How does this woman who can game the system,
Yeah.
beat the Panopticon,
Yeah.
and get her life back.
Yeah.
And then also the big theme doesn't get overextended and played out of, hey, this is also about contemporary prisons and slave labor.
Yeah.
You know, which is a powerful theme. And you know, if you're lucky enough to get this movie made, the critics will definitely pick up on that and laud a science fiction movie for taking on such a, you know, hefty theme in such an entertaining way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll definitely put on my thinking cap. I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out sort of like how I can take all my little darlings that I like so much, and like, you know, like I wanted this thing where sort of like Tuck gets out and she actually goes and sees the old lady who, you know, who she's combing the hair of, and, you know, and then basically, you know, like gets, you know, like gets frozen out by security and stuff like that, and the lady doesn't even like know her, doesn't understand what she's even talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like I just kind of like wanted sort of like all these sort of like little moments that would like take a, you know, like a year or two to play out before we even take it to the next thing. But, you know, like as a practical matter, you know, maybe this is, you know, like a 2-hour movie, and just basically figure out, just basically figure out how to sort of like get it to that moment of escape. And, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and again, in terms of things that I've said to everybody to broaden the discussion, and then I'll move on to Ned, but like, I do think that characters drive television and plot drives movies.
Yeah. And
this is more plot driven. Like, it kind of begins from this very good plot idea that AI failed, but this brilliant technical prison designer figured out this way to use prison labor to be AI.
Yeah.
Right? So the plot is sort of driving that. And then, you know, Kat's a really good protagonist, and you've created good characters and you know, but they're in service of that plot.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, you started with the characters, you know, and now, you know, even like with Martin, right? Like, he started with this world of all the of people who live in these ski resorts, and you know, how many of them do have addiction problems, and because, you know, so many ski bums are injured and then they get on painkillers, or they get, you know, and so it's like it's driven by a group of people and characters that then create plot over the course of that TV show.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So again, I think that's why in my gut I'm feeling like this is a movie.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. That's given me a lot to think about. Let me sort that out.
Ori, I just want to say, it just sounds like an amazing concept, dude. I mean, it sounds to me like a movie too. It's, you know, once you get in the nuts and bolts, it kind of lost me a bit straight away. But
wait, hold on one sec. My puppy's upset. I got to figure out why.
No worries, man. Dude, I just thought maybe you could, you know, turn it into a trilogy. It might be that. Maybe that would kind of, you know, like a compromise, a bit like the Matrix trilogy. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's sort of like, yeah, thanks a lot, Martin. It's, yeah, I have to think about that. I think that now that Peter's brought it up, I think that it's something that I might be able to do. I'll definitely put on my thinking cap.
As you kind of pointed out, like if you know, the cold open just becomes a scene in the second act, you know, the why now of sort of like how she fucks up and needs money and gets in bed with the brothers, you know, and you may even find that there's a slightly different plot setup, you know, that gets her into prison, where we discover this awful truth, you know, and then her gaming skills win. She beats the Panopticon.
Yeah.
Figure out you know, what the... Brilliant. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Awesome.
Good luck with it, Ori.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Peter, what if Ori did it as, Ori, what if you did it as get someone that illustrated it as a graphic novel, get it out there. Then you got your IP built in.
It would work really well as a graphic novel.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, Ned. I mean, there always are these companies that get some financing to try to make graphic novels really more for the intent of turning them into movies or TV shows, because it's very hard to grind out a profit as a graphic novel. But or if you want to look, there is a company. It's called 451. That's the name of the company. Those 3 numerals. Partly owned by Michael Bay. They look for screenplays that they can turn into graphic novels. I mean, that might be worth thinking about. And you could look into, I don't even know how one approaches like Dark Horse or Oni or the other sort of second tier graphic novel companies that aren't in the Marvel DC universe, but they're out there, you know.
Actually, I do know a little bit about that. I mean, like, I do know a little bit about that. Basically, yeah, I know a bit. Just like if anyone else cares, it's you essentially enter, if they like what you've got and they like the illustrator that you bring in. So you basically have to find your illustrator. You have to find your artist, your inker, your letterer. You basically bring to them like sample pages and a script. And if they like what they see, then they enter into a profit sharing agreement with you.
Yeah.
It basically gives you a schedule that you have to hit. And then sort of like you're basically doing everything except for printing and distribution. They do the printing and distribution.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, you're basically more of a partnership than anything else.
You really become, in addition to the writer, you're the producer. Because you hired all the creative people and bring the whole package.
Yeah. And depending on what you negotiate, you know, like basically they will probably try to get or insist on a percentage of the IP rights for obvious reasons.
Yes.
So, yeah. So it is doable. Interestingly enough, like a lot of comic book artists actually will not, I'm not saying that it's a bad idea as a result of this, but a lot of comic book artists actually will not sign up for something like this because they take the position that, you know, comics are their own art form and they're not just like a springboard for someone getting a movie deal.
Yes.
And so like a lot of the really good ones are the ones who like, you know, care a lot about their professional integrity will actually say no, but a lot will also say yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I looked into it. It's actually kind of like an interesting world.
Yeah.
And Dark Horse will take a meeting with you, but you have to have your portfolio ready. So you have to find an artist.
You have to have
find
the whole of it and the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, might be worth doing, you know, because then you would have that IP, you know, and then that gives the studios or the TV networks a lot greater level of comfort than, which to me makes no sense. Why wouldn't your great script give them that? But it just doesn't.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas even though, you know, how many people actually read a Dark Horse graphic novel? It might be as few as 5,000, you know?
Yeah.
But like the network or the studio doesn't seem to care. It's still a validation that Dark Horse, who created Judge Dredd, you know, or whatever they created, you know, paid for this.
Yeah.
So it's validation.
Yeah. I mean, the ironic thing is that it's validation, although like strictly speaking, you know, if you actually look at the contracts, it's almost like it's virtually self-publishing. You know, it's like, it's virtually self-publishing your best-selling novel. So, but, you know, I can kind of see it like basically kind of people going, well, they can tell their bosses it was a success in this field. So like, you know, I can't be blamed for like, you know, giving it a shot in this media. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's a reality of how, of the fear-based economy that the entertainment business is, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're asking these executives to go to their bosses and ask for millions of dollars. And the more validation they have, the braver it makes them to go to their boss and say, it's not just that I love this great script, Dark Horse loved it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not me. You know, it's a much bigger validation to use up one of those chips that you have in the favor bank with your boss to actually make her read something.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. I mean, like, it's really, it's definitely something. I thought about it enough to actually look into it, and it just, oh my God, like the politics of it just seemed kind of crazy. But
it's a little nightmarish.
Yeah.
And from the one conversation I did have with one of my writers who was trying to do this, and he lives up in Portland where Dark Horse and Oni and a bunch of these other graphic companies are located. And yeah, I mean, what he said is that even the comic artists that will do it, he said exactly what you said about, like, a lot of them just won't do it, right?
Yeah.
And then the ones that will do it, they'll actually tell you sort of just bluntly, the writing doesn't matter in the graphic novel universe. It's the art that matters.
Yeah.
And therefore you have to pay them,
Yeah.
you know, per page for everything they create. You know, you do take a monetary risk to put that deck together.
Yeah.
Because anybody you can get for free isn't worth getting, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless they're your friend from college.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Got it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Got to sort of like look at my own favor bank. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting thing. And it can be done, but there's like a lot of like kind of snaky little paths that you have to go down in order to do it. But there's something, so thank you very much, Peter. I'm actually going to like really seriously look at sort of like, I'm going to really seriously look at sort of like turning this into a feature. If nothing else, it lets me take sort of like the notes that I have for season 1 and kind of like turn it,
I was going to say, why don't you, for your homework assignment, see if you can do a very bare bones, 10, the 10 key beats of the 3-act structure, whether you're talking about True or anybody, look at what you've already got, right?
Yeah.
And say, can I apply this to the 10 key beats of a 3-act structure for a 2-hour movie?
Yeah.
And put that together and send it to me, and let's look at that and say, does this work? Yeah.
Okay, will do. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
How you doing, man?
Good. So we got 2 things to talk about. We got the Bible for Hoodoo Hell.
Right.
And then we've got your comedy, Love Fear. And man, you're really smart. What's your background?
Oh, I don't know. Too many war zones.
You don't have to go into it if you don't want, but like, I mean, your Hoodoo Hell Bible reads almost like a doctoral thesis. It's like, it's got footnotes. And I mean, it was actually pretty, I mean, because I fancy myself an intellectual, I enjoyed reading it just as like this really kind of fascinating thesis about Hoodoo Hell and why you want to write it, and all of these antecedents and quoting Albert Einstein and, all this stuff. Is that a deck or Bible or format that would work in the industry? Absolutely not. Like, boy, talk about being too smart for the room. An industry person, even a really smart one, wouldn't make it past page 1 of that deck.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
like my most successful guys, Bunky and Lutsky, they're way too smart for the room. And a big part of what I have to do with them is when they wrote the Bible for On Becoming a God in Central Florida, which is now going to become a TV show, I read it and I was like, guys, nobody's going to read this fucking thing. It's like, you're trying to sell the show. You're not trying to explain the show to an Oxford Don, and they're just like you in that regard. Like their original Bible for On Becoming a God in Central Florida was all about the history of class warfare in the United States and the history of multi-level marketing organizations and how they work and how they abuse the poor. And I mean, it was a great exegesis on all sorts of things, but it wouldn't have sold the show, And so like that's my first note. And then my second note is there on the first page, you make a statement. At all times, this series will be anchored in Cajun country. Right? That's right at the bottom of the first page.
Yeah.
And that gets back to this whole notion of integrity that I keep coming back to, right? Because when I was trying to read Hoodoo Hell, I couldn't follow it. I was honest about that. And you said, well, read the Bible. I think that will help you understand what I wanted to do, right?
Right.
And I see that statement, which is a pretty bold and clear statement. And that's exactly the kind of integrity question that I always come back to writers with and say, do you think the script that you wrote is absolutely anchored in Cajun country?
Well, no, I don't. It's a little too strong a statement. It's based out of there, but as you see it goes.
Yeah, but in other words, like don't now double back and fight your own thesis.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you made a strong thesis statement, and that's interesting to me. And so let's go back to like you've got this character Gunner, right?
Right.
You want him anchored in Cajun country.
Right. Yep.
You want the weird smash of cultures that Arcadians are, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing,
You know, it really is this incredible cultural melting pot, right? And you want that to drive Gunner, who's this very unexpected character, right? Like he's this guy who's an army ranger, but he speaks Pashtun and Farsi, you know, and loves literature and loves, you know what I mean? So like
well, if you know anything about Rangers, that's what they specialize in, right? They're cultural infiltrators, so they have to know a couple of languages. They usually specialize. So if you're in that particular theater, then you're going to learn the languages of those cultures, right? So
right. But what I'm saying is you've put that in a guy who's not your typical, you know, John McCain, West Point, Annapolis, whatever, white dude from an upper middle class family, John Kerry, Mueller, you know, look at any of the guys who really have the credibility of these war hero types. They do tend to come from these upper middle class white families. They go to West Point, they go to Annapolis, they go, you know, and then they learn Pashtun or Vietnamese or Farsi or whatever it takes, and they go do a bunch of tours of duty, and then they come back and run for office, right? But you want to put all this into a guy who's like a romanticized Cajun motherfucker, you know? That's cool. But like, then to me, you really do want to ground this story in Cajun country, right? Like I would almost rather meet Gunner between tours of duty or when he's on R&R and he's home, right? And we meet this guy who is this Cajun motherfucker, and the last thing we would expect is that he is a Pashtun and Farsi speaking Army Ranger of incredible capabilities. So once you've actually, and it was your word, anchored, once you've actually anchored the world,
right,
anchored the reality, and made us as an audience believe we understand who Gunner is and what he does, then you pull the rug out from under us and send them back to Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria, where the story begins, and you start and burn a slow fuse to introduce us to the weird.
You know, that's a really good point. Excellent point. And medias res, in the middle of things, I should actually start near the end of that pilot should be the beginning of the first episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
reverse it back so that, man, you go, wait, this guy's like exactly like you said. And then suddenly all this other stuff starts happening and say, what kind of world are we entering into here, right? You know?
Because one of the things I keep talking about with you guys and with all my clients is, remember, you're always thinking about the audience. Don't think about you and what you know about the story. Think about the audience and what they know about the story, right? So what are you, how, and remember, you also, we're all seducers. We need to seduce an audience into caring about our movie or TV show.
Right.
And so how do you feed them the character stuff, the information, the world building in such a way that you know so much about this? You've done all this research. You love this world. You're so knowledgeable, right? But then you give it to us in such a way that rather than kind of seducing me into it, I end up feeling lost. And so I'm coming back to you and saying, slow down, Ned, slow down. Remember that your audience mostly has a, high school education. They're not stupid, but, still the majority of people in America don't go past high school. Even if they go to college, all you got to do is look at the videos these days of people going to college campuses and interviewing people like, what was the Civil War? And they go, isn't that the one where we fought for freedom from England? I mean, like, even college kids are idiots these days, right? So, you have to remember that you have to slow down and build the world and the characters carefully so that the audience goes, I know this guy. He's a Cajun. He cooks crawdads. He's a car mechanic. He fixes cars. He's got a sexy little wife who dyes her hair blonde and loves Taylor Swift, right? Like, I know this world, and now I'm on the ride with you because he's fun, and and now I'm just riffing, right? And he punches somebody out in a bar brawl, so we know he's capable and physical and whatever, and then all of a sudden he's getting on a C-31 transport plane and he's back in country. Right? And then I get to know him as a soldier, and oh man, he's a great fucking soldier. He's a sniper and he's got the respect of everybody, right? And then now, okay, so I know he's a Cajun dude. I know he's a good dad. I know he's a good husband. Now I know that he's also a great fucking soldier and really respected by his squad, platoon, battalion. I don't know, level it is, right? And then now you introduce the really difficult part of what you want to accomplish with this very ambitious project, which is, guess what, guys? The world's not what it seems. And this thing called the WYRD, the weird, exists. It's real, right? So, I'm anchored in Cajun country. I'm anchored in a gunner that I know and like and understand. Now I'm comfortable with your storytelling. I'm living in your world. And now, bam, he finds an ancient Afghani ziggurat, or are those only in Iraq? I don't know, but wherever, right? Yeah. And crazy shit happens. But I'm with you because there was a little bit of voodoo in the Cajun sequence, so it's been hinted at,
No, I think this is absolutely brilliant. I totally, it just, the lights have gone off, right? And that's what we need people to bounce it off with, because we get so close to it, right?
But, yeah, exactly. And I think that so many people forget that they're writing, you're writing about this because you're so excited about it.
Exactly, yeah.
But you're not writing it for yourself. Yeah. You're writing it for an audience that doesn't give a shit about it.
Yeah. You got to win them over.
You got to win them over.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with what I was talking about with Ori, which he did do in Objectify, but didn't do in Original Skin, right? In Objectify, he begins with a woman who has a nice boyfriend. She has a daughter. She cares about stuff. we see what makes her special, which is her skill set at actually earning money on this game that she desperately needs because she can't pay the fucking cab driver unless she accomplishes this, right? But we're already on the ride with her because she's a good girlfriend, she's a good mother, and she's got this cool skill set, right? So forget about the fact that we're 30 years in the future. This is a woman I know, I like, I understand, and she has a cool skill set. So I'm going on this ride with her, you know? And then only much later, I mean, forget about the cold open for the minute, because cold opens can do whatever the fuck they want, right? But like as the actual show is progressing, only later does he drop the bomb that the AI doesn't exist and it's all forced labor. And that's the huge why now of the pilot and why it's exciting.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, you know, Ori, you didn't do any other bomb drops, right? Other than that one. Everything else is stuff that I relate to. It actually exists in our current world. You can make money grinding for gold in World of Warcraft for somebody else. You know, you can do all these things. You know, gamification exists on websites. You can go to Calvin Klein's website right now and play games where you decorate a mannequin of yourself and earn points toward a discount on a Calvin Klein t-shirt. You know, it's like gamification exists, but you're giving us a character we care about, putting her in a gamified world, and then dropping one bomb on us. And that's what you got to do in Hoodoo Hell, Ned. You got to, you know, give us a character we know who lives in a world we recognize, and then build his skill set, and then drop the bomb.
And you know what? Your Peroxide Blonde just totally blew a light bulb in my head. Think about what Taz is. We just think, you know, she's a hairdresser, Peroxide Blonde, and all this and that. But look what she does. She is going to be a huge kingpin later because of what happened when they were in Iran, right?
Yes.
That I don't know if you got detailed into it, but they go to a ritualistic sacrifice anyway.
Yes.
But all that would. But you know what? I have enough in that pilot for the first season if I really mine it out right. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and remember, I keep using the cliche, the phrase, but like in television, you burn a much slower fuse.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so used to. I write features, right? So I'm so used to jamming it like I.
You have to crank. You know, there are two. It's very Zen Buddhist. You know, there are two competing concepts that are actually mutually exclusive. So on the one hand, you have to shoot all your bullets in the pilot because no one's ever really going to read your format or Bible. But on the other hand, if you don't burn a slow fuse, and it doesn't feel like television.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to, it really is that Zen thing of keeping both things in mind. And quite honestly, what it comes down to is you really don't shoot all of your bullets in the pilot. You shoot your best bullets in the pilot.
Yeah, no,
and you hold a bunch of other ones. Ori, like what you were saying, you know, that scene you love with Tuck, right? Like, that may be a really great bullet, but like it didn't fit in the pilot, obviously. And then if you're boiling it down to a movie, it may not even fit into the movie, you know? But like with Original Skin, you were trying to throw every single great idea you had into that pilot. And so instead of burning a short fuse, it was like bombs going off every page.
4th of July.
4th of July. And, you know, fireworks are fun, but they actually get pretty boring after a while. You know? And so television is much more about seduce me with the character, make me care, then give me something unexpected about that character, then drop the bomb, the why now of why I'm going to watch this fucking show. And now I'm hooked, and I'm going to keep coming back.
Have you seen The Night Manager?
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of what you're saying, Peter, because it's 6 episodes, 6 hours. Could have been a feature, easily a 2-hour feature, but they burnt that slow,
Yes.
excuse. It's a perfect example of, and that's a good one to use to show a writer. This is the difference between a feature and a TV show, because easily that could have been a 2-hour movie.
And a lot of the John le Carre novels of equal density have been stripped down into 2-hour movies.
Absolutely, and they just mined it out. And so I just finished that series, and I just see totally what you're talking about.
Well, and look what they do there, right? You meet this guy who's very quiet and very polite, and seems like the last guy who would ever be an action character.
Exactly. Yeah.
Isolated in this snowed-in Swiss hotel.
Yeah.
You know, and then they show you you get a couple of flashbacks. So it's like, oh, wait, what happened back in Egypt? Well, let's see how that ties into things, right? And then fucking Hugh Laurie arrives, and that's the why now, right? Like suddenly he has to be of graceful service to an obvious motherfucker. And how is that going to change his life? And how does that tie into what happened in Egypt? And you know what I mean? It's like,
absolutely. No, totally.
And but they give you a little taste of his skill set, I think, in that first episode, right? Like, doesn't he go snooping around?
Yeah, he does. Well, the Sophie gets brutalized. You get actually the taste in the first montage as he's going through the chaos of the city. He's pretty cool cucumber with all of the riots going on, and he walks into the hotel, and you're sort of wondering, what kind of guy? And then just takes on an assuming night watchman job, right?
Yeah.
It's later in the second episode is where you begin to see, wow, okay, now we're getting a feel for this guy. And you think he's a spy at first, and he's not, right? So anyway, but just well set up that way.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So that's, I mean, yes, I think you're getting it, right? In terms of like, if you who to Hell to work, it's television. Start with character. Start with Gunner's character, Taz's character. Have the characters drive the plot, not the other way around.
Yeah, that's a great point. That was the best lesson. You said that. That was your first comment. I wrote it down at the beginning of the day, and it's a beautiful one right there.
Yeah. And then with Love Fear, it's ironic because in a way, like, it is your voice, but it does have the same problem as the TV scripts I've read, which is like you set up a completely hypochondriacal, the most neurotic man ever, right? And he has a wonderful voice, right? And then he goes to work, and there's a guy named Vinny, right? And yeah, Vinny's into boobs, boobs, beer, and
babes, and
the 3 B's,
whatever the killer bees he calls them.
Killer bees. So so he's a little lower class, and he's obviously
Burgers was the one. Sorry,
Burgers, yes. But so he's a little he's a little lower class. He's a little obviously more crass than Sebastian, but like he also is just filled with witticisms and.
Well, that's what I wanted to show you. You said, "Let me see that in a comedy." Where that's why I took it that way because the comments you gave. Maybe I went.
No, but here's what I'm saying: is that even in a comedy, right? You have to diversify the voices. It stops being funny if everybody's so witty, right?
Okay.
So Sebastian is witty because he is an over-intellectualized, crazy neurotic. Right? So he can constantly be witty about all of his neuroses and all of the crazy things that are going on in his life.
Right.
Because his intellectual, witty behavior is his shield. Right?
Absolutely.
But Vinny should be a lower middle class guy who the minute Sebastian starts talking that way would just say, "You're one fucking weird dude. Would you just shut up?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm your friend, Sebastian, and I'm telling you, shut the fuck up.
New Yorker.
Right. I mean, he should have a totally different voice than Sebastian.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Whereas instead, I read it now, and you do imply that he's lower middle class, and you do imply that he's sort of more interested in, you know, the common male things of burger, beer, and babes. But he's still tossing off witticisms left and right and bantering with Sebastian, and you know, and so it's the same thing as Hoodoo Hell. It's like, focus on how characters differ from Sebastian,
right?
Which present obstacles and conflicts, which then raise the comic stakes. Right? You know, like, just given, because I only read the beginning of it because I knew I was just going to give you this note, right? But like, so if Sebastian's going to go to a bar with Vinny, because Vinny has said, you know, shut the fuck up, just come to the bar with me, get yourself laid, then you won't have all these neuroses, right? Now he's thrown this challenge, this obstacle at Sebastian. And then, I mean, you have this scene, but like now, Sebastian's got to try to figure out how to pick up one of these girls at the bar that Vinny has just dropped in his lap. And she also is going to have her own voice and her own manner. And maybe at first she finds Sebastian a little charming until he starts going too deeply into all of his neuroses, and the comedy stakes rise, you know, and he ends up getting a drink dumped on his head or whatever the comedy punctuation is. But like, I mean, when I worked for John Hughes, the thing he taught me, you know, just simple was, if you're going to write Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is a high concept comedy about two guys stuck together trying to get home for Thanksgiving, right? The humor comes from the fact that it's not like, oh, one of them's sort of upper middle class and one of them's sort of lower middle class. It's literally the odd couple. You know, one of them is an upper middle class, intellectual, family-oriented neatnik, and the other is a big, fat, lower middle class slob. You know, you put the two most different guys possible. You know, all John Candy wants to talk about is Viking football, and all Steve Martin wants to talk about is the opera. You know?
Yeah,
and,
that's great. Yeah.
And you take those two guys and you force them together.
Right.
And then the comedy stakes just keep rising and rising and rising. And then John was also a master of the physical and visual comedy keeps rising, right? So their Lincoln Continental eventually becomes a completely bombed out shell of a car that they're still driving in sub-zero weather. You know, it's like,
classic. Yeah.
Yeah. Great movie. But the point being that by making them so different and giving them such different voices, you raise the comedy.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's good. How far did you get, by the way? Do you remember what
first few scenes.
Oh, so you didn't make it to the office, and when he turns into a Brit.
He turns into a...
he fakes being a Brit.
I did not get to that.
Oh, okay. Then you'll see the dialogue totally, it changes at that point there. But anyway, that's another story. Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? Why, you know, Ned, I think for you, go back into Hoodoo Hell.
Yeah.
And start looking at it from a character perspective.
Yeah. No, I totally, man. I got it. It's wonderful.
And then send me whatever you're coming up with, like, as character beats, you know, who else, you know, I mean, you have those in your existing Bible, but not in support of sort of how you would retell this story anchored in Cajun country and burning this slow fuse toward how the weird starts to creep into this story.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, it's great. You know, I spend a lot of time in Cuba, and that's a very similar culture in some ways of the melting pot, and how African and Caribbean and American culture just gets merged in a very interesting way.
And with a real belief in Santeria or other forms of...
Yeah, the Voodoo, yeah.
Of magic, yeah.
And that's eventually where it's going to be going. But actually another whole nother level deeper than that, but...
Yeah. Cool.
Great.
All right. Well, this was an all testosterone phone call. You know, I don't know what happened.
What's happened to our ladies?
I don't know what happened to our ladies. Heather did drop out, according to Joey, but I had read. Oh God, I'm so
Nicole, Nicole, is it? Nicole.
Yeah, her material, Nicole's material, and I was all set for her, but no show. All right, guys. Well, this was good.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah,
You're
Peter, I'm going to Cuba on Tuesday. I've got a couple of film projects I'm going to be hopefully working on there.
Oh, good. I'm jealous. I've always wanted to go there. Never been.
Yeah. So when these guys go, I just want to ask you a quick question, okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But anyway,
Okay.
guys, it's been so wonderful working with you. Some really clever, I think some very clever ideas and some very interesting executions there.
Thanks, Ned. Good luck, man, with your whatever you're working on, man.
Yeah,
Best of luck.
thanks. You know, I got some ins. I've done some very interesting stuff, and I'm
You sound
inside.
you sound a bit of a Hemingway figure hanging out. In Cuba. What the hell, man?
I was at the Hemingway house the last time I was there, so he's one of my favorite writers, by the way. So.
Hey, Ben, one thing, though, because I really didn't talk to you about like a homework assignment. What you might want to do, you may already have it, but it's kind of what I asked Ori to do, which is just do a kind of classic, you know, the 10 elements of the 3-act structure sort of thing for Grace with this different, you know, less high concepts middle part, and then with this new ending, and see if those beats, you know, make sense for you in a 3-act structure.
100%. Definitely will do that.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Pete.
Have a great week.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ned.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to thank you for that insight. I totally get it there, and I was what you told me at the end is exactly what I was just going to ask you about. I won't be there next week, but I'd like to rework that pilot and then send that to you to see if I'm in that groundedness that you're talking about there. Would that be okay?
You mean with Hoodoo Hell?
Yeah, Hoodoo Hell. Yeah. I think I'm on. I think I got something clever enough there that it's going to be different, yet grounded enough in work. I'm a big working class guy in many ways, believe it or not. But my mind takes off sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you know, I fancy myself an intellectual, but you're like, whoa. So that, I think that does catch you, you know, to coin a phrase, that does catch you up in your own underwear.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and hopefully we don't stain it. You know what I mean?
All right, man. We'll have a great time in Cuba.
Oh yeah, no. Have you been there?
No, my sister and my brother-in-law went last year, and just had the time of their lives, and sent all these great photographs, and really loved it.
It's, you know what? I know it's a little. I'm dual U.S. Canadian, so I can travel on a Canadian passport.
Oh, so you can go without a problem. Yeah,
no problem, right? But I'll tell you, if you can go there, it's changing. It's a big changes now with the new.
That's the thing. I would like to get there before all the old cars and all the old architecture.
It is. It's going back 50 years, and the people and the music you have, and the dance, everything. I mean, it is. And the Cubans are they're so smart, so clever. Oh, it's an unbelievable culture and an incredible mixture of, you know, Afro-Caribbean, African, and oh man, Spaniards, and totally try to get there.
Yeah, I'd love to go, and I'd love to go before it's ruined, because like I've never been to Prague, right? And I have friends who started going to Prague 40 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, I was there under communism and not under communism.
Yeah,
so,
but I hear that in the last 20 years or so, Prague's just been completely rebuilt.
Yeah, totally.
And has lost most of its charm. Like it's just now sort of a international city like any other.
Yeah. You know, I've been to 6 communist countries. I just have a fetish because they bring you back in time. I was in the Balkans under communism. Again, going back 50 years. There were kids with basketball hoops. You know what their hoop was? It was the rim of a tire.
Right, yeah.
You know, and people still with horse carts, which they still have in Cuba, and water buffalo. I mean, it's like, do it while you can. And there's a group in San Francisco that specializes in getting Americans in without any problem. The only thing you have to do is keep all of your receipts if you're an American, because you go into educational auspices, but you can go as someone who's developed as a manager and
looking for talent.
Yeah, exactly. But just keep all your receipts. So if they ever ask anything, nope, everything was strictly business, and it was this and that. But try to do it. I can only tell you.
Yeah, I'd love to go.
Well,
have a great trip.
Thank you so much, and thanks, man. You're spot. I told Joey, man, you know how to put the spike right where it belongs in a good way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I just really like working with writers, and I think writers get beat up a lot, and I do need to beat them up, but I can, they should be beat up in a nice way.
No, totally. No, you're gracious about it. You're honest, but you're gracious.
Yeah.
And hospitable, so that's great. Okay, so it'll be a few weeks before I get back to you, because I got 1,000 things on I got a feature of trying to get into Havana Film Festival and then develop some film projects. But
great.
If I get one film project going, maybe I'll take you on as a consultant. How's that, man?
There you go. It'd be fun.
Well, we do America doesn't do co-pros, but there's a way you can do it through Canada to Cuba and do a co-pro there.
Yeah.
And it's a gold mine just waiting for development.
See, and then I could get my trip to Cuba finally.
Yeah, you get your trip, man.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Have a great afternoon. Thanks.
Take care.
Right. Bye-bye.